When marketing executive Sabrina Ellis takes the wrong bus and ends up stranded in rural Willow Creek instead of her luxury spa retreat, she never expects to find connection with stoic farmer Caleb Maddox. Their unexpected encounter challenges everything she thought she wanted in life, proving that sometimes getting lost is the only way to find where you truly belong. Before we begin this story, comment below where you're watching from. Sabrina Ellis gripped her designer handbag tightly as the bus rumbled along the country road. The 27-year-old marketing assistant from Chicago was used to skyscrapers, and subway noise, not endless fields and the smell of fresh hay. She checked her phone again. No signal. Great, she muttered, pushing her dark hair behind her ear. She had planned this weekend getaway for months. After working 60-hour weeks at the marketing firm, she desperately needed a break. The Vineyard Spa retreat had looked perfect in the brochure. Massage treatments, wine tastings, and no demanding clients. But something felt wrong. The scenery outside didn't match the pictures she'd seen online. Exhausted from her week, Sabrina put on her headphones and drifted off to sleep as the bus continued down the winding road. When she woke up, the bus was completely empty. Sabrina blinked, confused. Outside the window, there was nothing but open farmland and a small wooden sign that read, "Welcome to Willow Creek." "Excuse me," she called to the driver, grabbing her suitcase. "This can't be right. I'm supposed to be at the Hillcrest Vineyard Spa." The elderly driver shook his head. "No vineyard around these parts, miss. This is Willow Creek. Last stop on this route." "But there has to be some mistake," Sabrina insisted, panic rising in her voice. "When's the next bus back to Chicago?" "Not until tomorrow morning, I'm afraid." Sabrina stepped off the bus into the cooling evening air, watching helplessly as it pulled away. She looked around at the nearly deserted main street with its handful of small shops, all closed for the day. The only place showing signs of life was a white barn at the end of a gravel path, its windows glowing with warm light. With TT, her high heels sinking into the dirt, Sabrina dragged her suitcase toward the barn. As she got closer, she could hear the sound of a radio playing old country music. "Hello?" she called, stepping inside. "Is anyone here?" A tall man with broad shoulders turned around, surprising her. He wore a plain flannel shirt with the sleeves rolled up, revealing strong, tanned forearms. His face was handsome but serious, with deep blue eyes that regarded her suspiciously. "We're closed," he said simply, turning back to the crates of vegetables he was sorting. "I'm not a customer," Sabrina explained, trying to keep her voice steady. "I took the wrong bus, and now I'm stranded here until tomorrow. My phone has no signal, and I need to find somewhere to stay tonight." The man turned around again, looking her up and down, from her stylish blouse to her expensive heels. "You're definitely not from around here," he said, his voice gruff. "Chicago," Sabrina replied, shivering slightly as the evening chill settled in. Without a word, the man took off his coat and placed it over her shoulders. The warmth of it enveloped her immediately, along with the scent of pine and earth. "I'm Caleb Maddox," he finally said. "This is my farm." "Sabrina Ellis, I was supposed to be at a spa retreat, not—" She gestured around. "Whatever this place is." "Willow Creek," Caleb said, a hint of defensiveness in his voice. "It's a good town." "I'm sure it is," Sabrina said quickly. "But is there a hotel or something around here?" Caleb shook his head. "Nearest hotel is 30 miles away." Sabrina's heart sank. "Then what am I supposed to do?" Caleb was silent for a moment, as if having an internal debate. "I have a guest room," he finally said. "In the old house. You can stay there tonight." Sabrina hesitated. Stay with a complete stranger in the middle of nowhere? But what choice did she have? "You took the wrong bus," Caleb added, his expression softening slightly. "But maybe you're exactly where you're supposed to be." The words hung in the air between them, unexpected and strangely comforting. "Thank you," Sabrina said, surprised by his kindness. Caleb's farmhouse was modest but clean, with simple furniture, and none of the fancy touches Sabrina was used to in her city apartment. The guest room had an old quilt on the bed and curtains that looked handmade. "Bathrooms down the hall," Caleb said, standing awkwardly in the doorway. "Kitchen's downstairs if you get hungry. Help yourself." Before Sabrina could thank him again, he was gone, his heavy footsteps retreating down the hallway. Alone in the unfamiliar room, Sabrina sat on the edge of the bed, fighting back tears of frustration. No spa weekend, no relaxation, just a strange house in a town she'd never heard of, and a grumpy farmer who barely spoke. She took out her phone, hoping for a miracle, but still no signal. With a sigh, she unpacked her nightclothes and got ready for bed, wondering how she'd survive until the morning bus. The next morning, Sabrina woke to the smell of coffee and bacon. Following the aroma downstairs, she found Caleb in the kitchen cooking breakfast. "Morning," he said, sliding a plate of eggs and bacon across the counter to her. "Coffee? Please," Sabrina said, surprised by the gesture. "You didn't have to. Cook for me." Caleb poured her a mug of strong black coffee. Everyone's got to eat. As they ate in awkward silence, Sabrina noticed how Caleb's kitchen, while basic, was spotlessly clean. His clothes, though worn, were well maintained. There was a care and precision to everything around him. "What time does the bus come?" she asked, breaking the silence. Caleb's phone rang before he could answer. His expression darkened as he listened to the caller. "I see," he said. "Thanks for letting me know." He hung up and looked at Sabrina. "That was Tom, the bus driver. Bus broke down 50 miles from here. Won't be fixed until Monday at the earliest." "Monday?" Sabrina nearly choked on her coffee. "But I can't stay here until Monday. I have a life, a job. I need to get back to Chicago." "Nearest taxi service is in Oakville, and they don't come out this far," Caleb said matter-of-factly. "Looks like you're stuck here for the weekend." Sabrina put her head in her hands. "This can't be happening." "It's not so bad here," Caleb said, a hint of defensiveness returning to his voice. "Plenty of fresh air, no traffic, no noise. And no phone signal, no internet, and no way to tell my boss I won't be back on Monday morning," Sabrina countered. Caleb shrugged. "I've got a landline. You can make calls, and there's internet at the library in town, but it's closed on weekends," Sabrina took a deep breath, trying to calm herself. "May I use your phone?" After making several calls to her boss explaining the situation, to her friend to cancel their Sunday brunch plans, and to the spa retreat to complain about their misleading directions, Sabrina felt slightly better. "Thank you," she said to Caleb, who had been working at the kitchen table on paperwork while she made her calls. "And I guess, thank you for letting me stay until Monday." "Not much choice," Caleb said, but his tone wasn't unkind. "I've got work to do today. You can come along or stay here." Surprised by the invitation, Sabrina considered her options. Stay alone in a strange house, or follow this quiet, mysterious man around his farm? "I'll come," she decided, "but I'm not exactly dressed for farm work." Caleb looked at her city clothes and nodded. "My sister left some clothes here last time she visited. They might fit you." The jeans and flannel shirt Caleb found for her were more casual than anything Sabrina had worn in years, but they were comfortable. She rolled up the sleeves and followed him outside, where the morning sun was already bright in the clear blue sky. The farm was larger than Sabrina had realized. Besides the main barn she'd entered the night before, there were several other buildings, fields of crops, and a chicken coop, where a dozen hens clucked and scratched at the ground. "You live here all alone?" she asked, as Caleb collected eggs. "From the coop. Just me," he confirmed. "Been that way for 5 years now." 5 years is a long time to be alone," Sabrina said before she could stop herself. Caleb handed her the basket of eggs. "I'm not alone. I've got the farm." As the day went on, Sabrina found herself drawn into the rhythm of farm life. Caleb taught her how to feed the chickens, showed her the vegetable garden where he grew tomatoes, lettuce, and carrots, and explained how he supplied fresh produce to local restaurants and stores. "So you're a businessman," Sabrina said, impressed by the operation. Caleb looked uncomfortable with the description. "I'm a farmer," he corrected. "My family's worked this land for generations." By afternoon, Sabrina's arms ached from carrying buckets of feed and her face felt warm from the sun, but strangely she didn't mind. There was something satisfying about the physical work, so different from her days sitting at a computer in the marketing office. "You're doing okay," Caleb said, as they walked back to the house, the closest thing to a compliment he'd given her all day. Sabrina felt herself smile. "Thanks. It's different from what I'm used to." "Different bad or different good?" Caleb asked, a hint of curiosity in his voice. Sabrina considered the question. Just different, but not as bad as I thought it would be. That evening, after a simple dinner of homemade stew, they sat on Caleb's front porch, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. The silence between them felt more comfortable now. "Your farm is beautiful," Sabrina said honestly. "How much land do you have?" "About 2,000 acres, Caleb replied, sipping a glass of water. Sabrina's eyes widened. 2,000? That's a lot." Caleb nodded. "My grandfather started with 50 acres. My father expanded to 500. I bought the rest when oldie." "Man Jenkins wanted to sell." "You must be doing well to afford all that," Sabrina observed. Caleb shrugged, clearly uncomfortable talking about money. "The farm provides what I need." As darkness fell, fireflies began to appear, their tiny lights blinking in the fields around the house. Sabrina had never seen anything like it in Chicago. "It's like magic," she whispered, watching the display. 4. The first time Caleb smiled, a small fleeting smile that transformed his serious face. "Nature's light show happens every summer." Sabrina found herself staring at him, surprised by how that simple smile changed him. In that moment, Caleb Maddox wasn't just the gruff farmer who'd reluctantly taken her in. He was a man with depths she hadn't glimpsed before, and somewhere deep inside, something shifted. This weekend trapped in Willow Creek suddenly didn't seem like such a disaster after all. As they went inside, Caleb's phone rang again. He answered it, his expression darkening as he listened. "Everything okay?" Sabrina asked when he hung up. "Storm coming tomorrow," he said, his voice tight with worry. "Going to be a bad one." Sabrina looked out the window at the clear night sky. "But it's so nice out. Weather changes fast here," Caleb explained. "Need to secure everything before it hits." He looked at her, concern evident in his blue eyes. "Looks like we're in for a rough day tomorrow. Hope you don't mind getting a little wet." Sabrina thought about her planned spa weekend, the cucumber water, the soft music, the plush robes. Then she looked at Caleb with his honest face and calloused hands. "I'll help however I can," she promised, surprising herself with how much. She meant it. Caleb nodded, that small smile appearing again. "Get some rest. Tomorrow's going to be a long day." As Sabrina climbed the stairs to the guest room, she realized something strange. For the first time in months, she wasn't thinking about work, or deadlines, or her pending promotion. Instead, her mind was filled with chickens and vegetable gardens, and the way Caleb's eyes crinkled when he almost smiled. She fell asleep to the sound of crickets chirping outside her window, wondering what tomorrow would bring in this unexpected detour called Willow Creek. The next morning, dark clouds gathered on the horizon as Sabrina followed Caleb around the farm. The air felt heavy with the coming storm, and a strong wind had already started to blow. "We need to move the young seedlings into the greenhouse," Caleb explained, his voice raised against the rising wind, "and secure anything that might blow away." Sabrina nodded, rolling up the sleeves of the borrowed flannel shirt. "Just tell me what to do." For the next few hours they worked side by side, moving plants, closing shutters, and securing equipment. Sabrina's marketing reports and PowerPoint presentations seemed a world away as she carried trays of vegetable seedlings into the safety of the greenhouse. "You're a hard worker," Caleb said as they finished tying down a tarp over the hay bales. "Didn't expect that from a city girl." "There's a lot you don't know about me," Sabrina replied, brushing dust from her hands. "Just like there's a lot I don't know about you." Caleb looked up at the darkening sky. "Let's get inside. Storm's almost here." They had just made it to the porch when the first heavy raindrops began to fall. Within minutes, it turned into a downpour, with lightning flashing across the sky and thunder booming overhead. "Wow," Sabrina said, watching the rain from the safety of the covered porch. "You weren't kidding about it being a bad one." Caleb stood next to her, his shoulder almost touching hers. "Country storms are different from city ones. Nothing blocking the view out here. A particularly bright flash of lightning illuminated his face, highlighting his strong jaw and the intensity in his blue eyes. Sabrina felt her breath catch. How had she not noticed before how handsome he really was? "We should check the basement," Caleb said, pulling away. Make sure it's not flooding." The old farmhouse creaked and groaned with the force of the wind as they made their way downstairs. The basement was dry, but Caleb insisted on checking all the windows and the foundation for any signs of leakage. "You really care about this place?" Sabrina observed as she held a flashlight for him. "It's been in my family for generations," Caleb replied, his voice echoing in the dim space. "My grandfather built this house with his own hands." "That's amazing," Sabrina said honestly. "In Chicago, nobody knows who built their apartment building. Nobody cares." Caleb straightened up, looking at her curiously. "Do you like living in the city?" The question surprised her. I guess I've never really thought about it. It's just where I've always been." "But do you like it?" he pressed. Sabrina considered the question. "I like the convenience, the restaurants, the shopping, the energy, but sometimes—" She hesitated. "Sometimes it feels like I'm just rushing from one place to another without really experiencing anything." Power went out suddenly, leaving them in darkness except for the flashlight's beam. "Perfect timing," Caleb said dryly. "Let's go upstairs. I've got candles and a battery radio." The farmhouse took on a cozy, intimate feeling as Caleb lit candles. Throughout the living room, the storm continued to rage outside, rain lashing against the windows and thunder shaking the old walls. "Does this happen often?" Sabrina asked, settling onto the worn but comfortable couch. "Few times a year," Caleb said, turning on a battery-powered radio that crackled with the local weather report. "Usually not this bad." The reporter's voice warned of flash flooding and downed power lines throughout the county, advising everyone to stay indoors. Sabrina tried not to think about what this might mean for her return to Chicago. "Sounds like we're stuck here," Caleb said, voicing her concerns. "Story of my weekend," Sabrina sighed, "but at least we're dry." Caleb sat in an armchair across from her, his face illuminated by the warm glow of the candles. For a moment, neither spoke, listening to the storm and the crackling radio. "So," Sabrina finally said, "tell me about yourself, Caleb Maddox. What does a farmer do when he's not farming?" A shadow crossed Caleb's face. "Not much to tell. I work, I eat, I sleep." "No family? No friends?" Sabrina pressed, curious about this solitary man. "My parents passed 10 years ago," Caleb said quietly. "Car accident. My sister lives in California with her husband and kids. I see them at Christmas usually." "I'm sorry about your parents," Sabrina said softly. "And friends?" Caleb shrugged. "Got a few. My buddy Mike runs the feed store in town. We grab a beer sometimes. That's it?" Sabrina couldn't help asking. "What about—" She hesitated, unsure if she should pry further. "What about relationships?" The candle flames flickered as Caleb shifted in his seat. "Not anymore." The finality in his tone made it clear the subject was closed, but Sabrina couldn't help wondering what had happened to make him so guarded. "What about you?" Caleb asked, turning the tables. "Got someone waiting for you back in Chicago?" "No," Sabrina admitted. "I've been too busy with work. I'm up for a promotion soon, and it's all I've been thinking about for months." "What kind of work?" "Marketing. I create campaigns for various clients, mostly luxury brands. My boss says I have a knack for knowing what people want before they know it themselves." Caleb's expression was unreadable. "Sounds important." "No. Is to me," Sabrina said, a hint of defensiveness in her voice. "I've worked hard to get where I am." "Never said you didn't," Caleb replied. "Just different from what we value around here." "And what's that?" "Honesty. Hard work that produces something real. Community." Caleb's eyes met hers across the candlelit room. Things that last. Something about his words made Sabrina uncomfortable, as if he was suggesting her life in Chicago was somehow less meaningful than his life here. "Marketing isn't just about selling things people don't need," she argued. "It's about connecting products with the people who want them, creating stories that resonate." "Stories," Caleb repeated. "But are they true stories?" Before Sabrina could answer, a loud crash came from outside, making them both jump. "Stay here," Caleb ordered, grabbing a raincoat and flashlight before heading out into the storm. Sabrina waited anxiously, watching through the window as the beam of his flashlight moved across the yard. After what seemed like an eternity, he returned, soaking, wet despite the raincoat. "Oak tree fell across the driveway," he reported, shaking water from his hair. "We're not going anywhere until it's cleared, even after the storm passes." "Great," Sabrina muttered. "Another delay." Caleb removed his wet coat and boots. "I'll call Mike in the morning. He's got a chainsaw. We'll get it cleared." Sabrina nodded, suddenly feeling guilty about her complaint. "Thank you for everything. I know I'm not exactly a welcome guest." "You're not unwelcome," Caleb said, his voice softer than she'd heard it before. "It's just been a long time since I've had company." The honesty in his voice touched something in Sabrina. "Well, I appreciate you letting me stay and teaching me about the farm." Caleb ran a hand through his damp hair, making it stand up in a way that was unexpectedly endearing. "You're a quick learner." The compliment warmed her more than it should have. "So are we just going to sit in the dark all night?" she asked, trying to lighten the mood. "Got some playing cards?" Caleb offered. "Or there's a shelf of books in the study." "Cards sound good," Sabrina said, "but I warn you, I'm pretty competitive." Caleb's mouth twitched in what might have been the beginning of a smile. Wouldn't expect anything less from a city girl. They played gin rummy by candlelight, the storm continuing outside. Sabrina won the first few hands, but Caleb soon caught on to her strategy. "You're not as easy to read as I thought," he commented after winning his third consecutive hand. "Is that what you thought? That I'd be easy to read?" Sabrina asked, shuffling the cards. "When you first showed up in those fancy shoes with that designer suitcase, yeah, I thought I had you figured out. And now?" Caleb's eyes met hers across the table. "Now I'm not so sure." The air between them felt charged, like the storm had somehow moved indoors. Sabrina dealt the next hand, aware of every movement of Caleb's hands as he arranged his cards. "Your turn," she reminded him when he stayed silent too long. The night stretched on with more card games and eventually conversation that flowed more freely than before. Caleb told her about growing up on the farm, about summer swimming holes, and winter sleigh rides. Sabrina shared stories of college days and her first job interview where she'd spilled coffee on her white blouse right before meeting the CEO. "Oh, what did you do?" Caleb asked, genuinely interested. "I walked in with my blazer buttoned up to my neck, nailed the interview, and then passed out from heat exhaustion in the elevator afterward," Sabrina laughed. Caleb's deep chuckle joined hers, the sound warming the room more than any candle could. Around midnight, the storm began to subside, the thunder moving farther away and the rain lessening to a gentle patter. "We should get some sleep," Caleb said, standing and stretching. "Got a lot of cleanup to do tomorrow." Sabrina nodded, suddenly reluctant for the evening to end. "Thank you for tonight. It was nice." "It was," Caleb agreed, his voice quiet. They stood facing each other in the candle-lit room, neither moving. Toward the stairs, Sabrina felt her heart beating faster as Caleb took a step closer. "Sabrina," he began, then stopped as if unsure what he wanted to say. "Yes?" she prompted, holding her breath. The moment stretched between them, full of possibility. Then Caleb stepped back, his expression closing off again. "Good night," he said simply, turning away. "Good night," Sabrina replied, trying to hide her disappointment. In her room, Sabrina lay awake, listening to the fading storm, replaying the evening in her mind. What had almost happened downstairs? And why did she feel so confused about a man she'd known for barely 2 days? Morning came with clear skies and sunshine that seemed to mock the destruction left by the storm. Branches and debris littered the yard, and the massive oak tree completely blocked the driveway. "Mike's coming with his chainsaw," Caleb informed her as they ate breakfast. "Should have the way cleared by afternoon." "Then I can catch the bus tomorrow?" Sabrina asked, surprised by her own lack of enthusiasm. Caleb nodded, not meeting her eyes. "If the roads are clear enough." They spent the morning cleaning up the yard, working together in a rhythm that now felt familiar. Sabrina found herself noticing little things about Caleb, the way he always checked if she needed help before moving on to the next task, how he seemed to know exactly when a branch would be too heavy for her, the quiet satisfaction in his expression when they finished a difficult job. Mike arrived after lunch, a friendly man with a weathered face and an easy smile. He seemed surprised. To see Sabrina. Well, he said, looking from her to Caleb with obvious curiosity. Didn't know you had company, Cal. Sabrina's stranded here until the bus comes, Caleb explained quickly. She took the wrong route. Lucky for you, Mike said with a wink that made Sabrina blush. The two men made quick work of the fallen tree, cutting it into manageable pieces and clearing the driveway. Sabrina helped stack the smaller branches, aware of Mike watching her, and Caleb with interest. You two seem to work well together, he commented as they paused for water. Sabrina's been helping around the farm, Caleb said, his tone neutral. Chicago girl gone country, Mike grinned. Who would have thought? It's just temporary, Sabrina reminded them both, ignoring the pang she felt at the words. When Mike left, he gave Sabrina a warm handshake. Nice meeting you. Maybe we'll see you around these parts again someday. Maybe, she replied, though they both knew it was unlikely. The afternoon sun was warm as Sabrina and Caleb finished cleaning up the yard. A goat that had escaped its pen wandered over, eyeing Sabrina's scarf that hung from her back pocket. Watch out, Caleb warned, but it was too late. The goat snatched the silk scarf and pranced away, the colorful fabric dangling from its mouth. Hey, Sabrina called, chasing after it. That's my favorite scarf. The goat dodged her attempts to grab it, leading her on a wild chase around the yard while Caleb watched, amusement clear on his face. Don't just stand there, Sabrina called. To him. Help me, Caleb joined the chase, cornering the goat against the barn. As Sabrina reached for her scarf, the goat suddenly darted between her legs, causing her to lose her balance. She fell backward, right into Caleb's arms. He caught her easily, steadying her against his chest. For a moment, they stayed frozen like that, his arms around her waist, her back pressed against him. You okay? He asked, his voice low near her ear. Sabrina turned in his arms to face him, suddenly aware of how close they were. I'm fine, she managed to say, though her heart was racing. Caleb's eyes dropped to her lips, then back to her eyes. The tension between them was palpable, electric. Then the goat bleated loudly, still holding the scarf, and the moment broke. They both laughed, the sound releasing some of the tension. I'll get it, Caleb promised, and he did, retrieving the now somewhat soggy scarf from the unrepentant goat. Guess I have a souvenir from Willow Creek now, Sabrina said, holding the damp scarf with a smile. Guess you do, Caleb agreed, that rare smile appearing briefly. As they walked back to the house, their hands brushed accidentally. Neither pulled away for several steps, the brief contact saying more than words could. That evening, as the sun began to set, they sat on the porch swing, a comfortable silence between them. The air was fresh after the storm, filled with the scent of wet earth and blooming flowers. Your life here, Sabrina began, then paused, searching for the right words. It's beautiful, in a way I never expected. Caleb looked at her, surprised. Most city people find it boring. It's not boring, she said honestly. It's real. Everything has a purpose, a reason. In Chicago, sometimes I feel like I'm just going through motions without knowing why. But you're going back tomorrow, Caleb stated. Not a question, but a fact. I have to, Sabrina said, though the words felt heavy in her mouth. My job, my apartment, my life, it's all there. Caleb nodded, his expression unreadable. Of course. But I'll remember this weekend, she added softly. I'll remember you. Something flashed in Caleb's eyes. Pain, perhaps, or longing. But he quickly looked away, focusing on the sunset. It's getting late. We should head inside. That night, Sabrina packed her belongings, preparing for the morning bus. Her designer clothes and high heels seemed out of place now, like they belonged to someone else. She folded Caleb's sister's borrowed clothes neatly on the bed, running her hand over the soft flannel one last time. Tomorrow she would return to Chicago, to marketing reports and client meetings, to take out dinners eaten alone in her high-rise apartment. And Caleb would stay here, tending his farm, living the solitary life he'd chosen. Yet something had changed between them in these 3 days. Something neither of them had expected, and neither seemed ready to acknowledge. As Sabrina climbed into bed for her last night at the farmhouse, she wondered what might have been if they'd met under different circumstances. If she wasn't a city girl with ambition, And he wasn't a country farmer with a past he wouldn't discuss, but they were who they were. And tomorrow, their brief connection would end, or so she thought. Monday morning dawned bright and clear, as if the storm had never happened. Sabrina stood in the guest room, looking at her reflection in the small mirror. She'd changed back into her city clothes, slim-fitting pants, a stylish blouse, and those impractical high heels. After 3 days in flannel and jeans, they felt strange, constricting. Downstairs, Caleb was making breakfast, the smell of coffee and bacon filling the kitchen. They ate mostly in silence, the clock on the wall ticking loudly, counting down. The minutes until the bus would arrive. "I called the station," Caleb said, breaking the silence. "Bus is running on schedule today. Should be here at 10. Sabrina nodded, pushing her eggs around on her plate. "Thank you. For everything." "Just did what anyone would do," Caleb replied, not meeting her eyes. "Not anyone," Sabrina said softly. "You." Something shifted in Caleb's expression, a flicker of emotion quickly masked. He stood abruptly, taking his empty plate to the sink. "We should get going soon." Sabrina followed him outside to his old pickup truck. Her designer suitcase looked out of place in the truck bed, covered in a light layer of farm dust that she didn't bother to wipe away. As they drove toward town, Willow Creek looked different. In the morning light, not the desolate place she'd first thought, but a small charming community waking up to start the week. Farmers were already in their fields, the general store was opening its doors, and children waited at corners for the school bus. "It's a nice town," Sabrina said, breaking the silence. "Told you so," Caleb replied, a hint of pride in his voice. They reached the bus stop with 15 minutes to spare. Caleb parked the truck but made no move to get out, his hands still gripping the steering wheel. "Thank you again," Sabrina said, unsure what else to say. "For letting me stay." Caleb nodded, his jaw tight. It was no trouble. An awkward silence fell between them, filled with all the things neither seemed able to say. "I should—" Sabrina gestured toward the bus stop. "Right," Caleb said, finally moving to get out of the truck. He retrieved her suitcase from the back and set it down on the sidewalk. They stood facing each other, the morning sun casting long shadows behind them. "Well," Sabrina said, offering her hand. "Goodbye, Caleb." Caleb looked at her hand for a moment before taking it, his calloused palm warm against hers. "Goodbye, Sabrina." She waited for him to say something more, to give her a reason to stay, but he remained silent, his blue eyes unreadable. The sound of the approaching bus broke the moment. Sabrina pulled her hand away, suddenly acutely aware that in a few minutes she would be gone, heading back to her real life. As the bus pulled up, doors hissing open, Caleb finally spoke. "Sabrina," he said, his voice low and intense, "you made this place feel like more than land. You made it feel like home." The words hit her like a physical force, stealing her breath. Before she could respond, she found herself moving toward him, closing the distance between them. Her lips met his in a kiss that surprised them both, tender at first, then deepening with all the feelings they'd left unspoken. When they broke apart, Sabrina saw a vulnerability in Caleb's eyes she'd never glimpsed before. "I have to go," she whispered, tears threatening. The bus driver honked impatiently. "I know," Caleb said, stepping back, his expression closing off again. Sabrina picked up her suitcase and boarded the bus, finding a window seat. As the bus pulled away, she pressed her hand against the glass, watching Caleb's figure grow smaller until he was just a distant silhouette against the morning sky. Hours later, Sabrina entered her Chicago apartment. The sounds of the city, car horns, sirens, the elevated train rumbling nearby, a jarring contrast to the quiet of Willow Creek. Her answering machine blinked with messages, most from her boss, reminding her about the important client meeting tomorrow. She unpacked methodically, placing her clothes in the hamper, except for one item, the silk scarf the goat had stolen, now clean, but still bearing a tiny tear at one corner. She held it for a moment before carefully folding it and placing it in her drawer. Tuesday morning brought a return to routine. Sabrina, dressed in her usual work attire, applied her makeup perfectly and headed to the office, coffee in hand. "There she is," her boss Karen exclaimed when Sabrina walked in. "Our country girl returns. How was your spa weekend?" I never made it to the spa, Sabrina admitted. I took the wrong bus and ended up in a little town called Willow Creek. Karen's eyebrows shot up. You're kidding. What did you do? I'd die without my amenities. Actually, Sabrina said, surprising herself with the truth in her words, it was kind of amazing. Well, you can tell me all about your rustic adventure after the client meeting, Karen said, already moving on. Jenkins wants the full campaign presentation. This could be your big break, Sabrina. The meeting went perfectly. Sabrina's presentation was flawless, her responses to questions confident and articulate. Mr. Jenkins, the CEO of a luxury watch brand, seemed impressed. Excellent work, Ms. Ellis, he said as the meeting concluded. You understand our vision perfectly. Karen was beaming as they left the conference room. That was incredible, Sabrina. The promotion is practically yours now. Sabrina smiled and thanked her, but as she returned to her desk, a strange emptiness settled over her. Her computer screen showed the watch campaign she'd worked so hard on. Sleek, expensive timepieces showcased on the wrists of beautiful models. Things that last, Caleb had said about what he valued. Looking at the watches now, Sabrina wondered if they really did last, or if they were just expensive status symbols, replaced as soon as the next model came out. The week passed in a blur of meetings, deadlines, and late nights at the office. Sabrina threw herself into her work, trying not to think about a certain blue-eyed farmer or the kiss they'd shared at a bus stop. On Friday afternoon, Karen called Sabrina into her office, practically bouncing with excitement. I have amazing news, she said, gesturing for Sabrina to sit. Jenkins loved your work so much he wants you to lead the entire campaign. And the best part, she paused dramatically, I've recommended you for the senior marketing director position. That's wonderful, Sabrina said, trying to match Karen's enthusiasm. You don't sound excited, Karen frowned, studying her face. This is what you've been working toward for years. I am excited, Sabrina insisted, forcing a smile. It's just been a long week. Back at her desk, Sabrina stared at her computer screen without really seeing it. The promotion, the opportunity, it was everything she'd wanted. So why did it suddenly feel hollow? Her hand went to her desk drawer where she'd stored the silk scarf she'd brought from Willow Creek. As she touched the soft fabric, memories flooded back, feeding chickens with Caleb, working side by side during the storm, playing cards by candlelight, that moment with the goat and the almost kiss that had followed. The weekend came, and Sabrina declined invitations from friends to go out, choosing instead to stay in her apartment. She ordered takeout that she barely tasted and watched TV shows without registering the plots. Sunday morning she woke early and made coffee, carrying it to her small balcony that overlooked the city. Chicago sprawled before her, magnificent and imposing with its skyscrapers and busy streets. It had always been her home, her world, but now her mind kept drifting to open fields, to the smell of fresh hay, to a simple farmhouse where time seemed to move differently. She picked up her phone, then set it down again. What would she even say? Hi, remember me, the city girl who accidentally spent a weekend at your farm? That seemed ridiculous. Monday brought the official announcement of Sabrina's promotion. Her colleagues congratulated her, some genuinely happy for her, others with thinly veiled envy. Karen took her to an expensive lunch to celebrate. So, what's next for our new senior director? Karen asked over wine and overpriced salads. The Jenkins campaign will put you on the map. After that, who knows, maybe New York, London? Sabrina smiled politely, but her thoughts were far from global marketing capitals. They were in a small town she'd never heard of a week ago, with a man who made her feel more alive in 3 days than she'd felt in years. That evening, as Sabrina worked late finishing a proposal, her office phone rang. Sabrina Ellis, she answered automatically. Ms. Ellis, there's someone in the lobby asking for you, the security guard informed her. Says his name is Caleb Maddox. Should I send him up? Sabrina's heart stopped. Caleb Maddox. Are you sure? Yes, ma'am. Tall guy. Looks a bit out of place in his flannel shirt. Says he needs to see you. I'll come down, Sabrina managed, her hands suddenly shaking. The elevator ride to the lobby felt like the longest minute of her life. When the doors opened, she saw him immediately. Caleb, standing awkwardly in the sleek corporate lobby, looking so out of place in his simple clothes among the marble and glass. "Caleb," she said, approaching slowly, half afraid he might vanish if she moved too quickly. He turned, and the look on his face when he saw her made her heart flutter. "Sabrina," he said, his voice just as she remembered. "I hope it's okay that I came." "How did you find me?" she asked, still not quite believing he was really there. "You left your business card in the pocket of my coat," Caleb explained. "The one I put around your shoulders that first night." Sabrina remembered now. She'd tucked a card into his coat pocket without thinking, a habit from networking events. "Why are you here?" she asked, needing to hear him say it. Caleb looked nervous, so different from the confident farmer she'd met. "After you left, I found something in my coat pocket," he said, reaching into his jeans pocket and pulling out a folded napkin. Sabrina recognized it immediately, the napkin she'd impulsively written on while waiting for the bus. She'd tucked it into his coat when he wasn't looking, never expecting him to find it so soon or to act on it. "If you ever believe in love again, call me. I'm waiting." Caleb read from the napkin, his eyes meeting hers. "Did you mean it?" "Yes," Sabrina said without hesitation, every word. "I don't have a phone with me," Caleb said, a hint of a smile appearing. "So I figured I'd come in person instead." "You drove all the way to Chicago?" Sabrina asked, stunned by the gesture. Caleb nodded. "Mike drove me to the bus station, said it was about time I stopped being stubborn." "And the farm?" Sabrina asked, knowing how important it was to him. "Got a neighbor watching things for a few days," Caleb replied. "First time I've left in 5 years." The significance of that statement wasn't lost on Sabrina. "Why now?" she asked softly. "What changed?" Caleb took a step closer to her. "For 5 years I've been living but not really alive. Not since Elizabeth left." "Elizabeth?" Sabrina asked, finally learning the name of the woman who had hurt him. "My fiancée," Caleb explained, his voice low. "She couldn't handle farm life. Said it was too isolated, too much work, not enough glamour." He said the last word with a hint of bitterness. "She left a month before the wedding." "I'm sorry," Sabrina said sincerely. "I closed myself off after that," Caleb continued. "Figured it was easier to be alone than to risk that kind of pain." "Again. And then you showed up, lost and irritated in those ridiculous shoes." Despite everything, Sabrina laughed. "They were designer, thank you very much." "They were impractical," Caleb countered, his smile growing. "But you were unexpected. Different than I thought a city girl would be, stronger, more real." He reached for her hand, holding it gently. "After you left, the farm felt empty, quiet in all the wrong ways. And I realized something." "What?" Sabrina asked, hardly daring to breathe. "That maybe I was ready to believe in love again if it was with you." The words hung between them, honest and vulnerable and perfect. "I just got promoted," Sabrina said, needing him to understand. "Senior marketing director. It's what I've been working toward for years." Caleb's face fell slightly, but he nodded. "I understand. I didn't come here expecting you to drop everything for a farmer you barely know." "No," Sabrina said quickly. "That's not what I meant. I just..." She took a deep breath. "I don't know how this works. My life is here. Yours is in Willow Creek." "I don't know either," Caleb admitted. "I just know that 3 days with you made me feel more alive than I've felt in 5 years. And I couldn't just let that go without at least trying." Sabrina looked around the lobby of her office building, the place where she'd spent countless hours working toward a dream that suddenly seemed less important than the man standing before her. "I have vacation days," she said slowly, an idea forming. 2 weeks, actually. I never take them." Hope flickered in Caleb's eyes. "Oh? Would those ridiculous goats of yours miss me if I came back to visit for a while?" Sabrina asked, a smile spreading across her face. "Maybe long enough to figure out what this is between us." Caleb's answering smile was brighter than she'd ever seen it. "I think they'd manage," he said, pulling her closer. "And so would I." Sabrina wrapped her arms around his neck, not caring who might be watching in the corporate lobby. "And after the 2 weeks, we'll figure it out," Caleb promised, "together." Their lips met in a kiss that felt like coming home, to a place Sabrina hadn't even known she was searching for, until she accidentally found it. When they broke apart, Sabrina rested her forehead against Caleb's, overwhelmed by the unexpected turn her life had taken. "So," she said, "when's the next bus to Willow Creek?" Caleb laughed, the sound warm and full of promise. "Actually, I brought something better than a bus." "What's that?" "A truck," he said, his eyes twinkling. "An old one, with enough room for you, me, and whatever future we decide to build." Sabrina looked at her office building, then back at Caleb. Her promotion, her city life, it would all still be here in 2 weeks if she wanted it, but for now there was something more important waiting. "Let me grab my things," she said, making her decision. "And this time I'm wearing the right shoes for the journey." Later that evening, as Caleb's truck headed out of Chicago toward the countryside, Sabrina kicked off her high heels and settled in for the ride, her hand resting comfortably in Caleb's. The city lights faded behind them, and for the first time, in her career-focused life, Sabrina wasn't thinking about tomorrow's meetings or next week's deadlines. Instead, she was thinking about chicken coops and vegetable gardens, candlelit card games and front porch swings. And mostly, she was thinking about the quiet man beside her, who had driven hours on a bus to find her, carrying nothing but a napkin, with a promise and the courage to believe in love again. As they crossed the city limits, Sabrina felt a weight lift from her shoulders. She didn't know what the future held, but for the next 2 weeks at least, she was exactly where she was supposed to be. The 2-week vacation passed in a blur of shared moments and deepening feelings. Sabrina traded her designer clothes for comfortable jeans and flannel shirts, her high heels for practical boots that Caleb helped her pick out at the general store. She learned more about farming than she'd ever thought possible. How to tell when tomatoes were perfectly ripe, the right way to feed the chickens without getting pecked, even how to drive Caleb's ancient tractor. Though that lesson had ended, with both of them laughing as she accidentally drove through a mud puddle. More importantly, she learned about Caleb, the quiet strength that ran through everything he did, the way he cared for his land with a dedication that went beyond simple ownership, the gentle way he treated every animal, even the troublesome goat that had stolen her scarf, the rare but wonderful sound of his laughter, which she heard more frequently with each passing day. And Caleb learned about her, her ambition that had driven her since childhood, her eye for design and color, her quick wit that had helped her rise in the competitive world of marketing. He watched, impressed, as she fixed his ancient office computer and set up a simple spreadsheet system that made tracking farm expenses much easier. They argued about coffee. He liked it black, she insisted on cream, laughed when the same mischievous goat somehow found its way into the kitchen, and shared quiet evenings on the porch swing, talking about everything and nothing. But as the 2 weeks drew to a close, the question they'd both been avoiding loomed large. 3 days left, Caleb said one evening as they sat on the porch, watching fireflies dance in the gathering dusk. Sabrina's heart tightened. "I know." "Have you decided?" he asked, his voice careful, neutral. "About going back?" She had been thinking. About little else, weighing her options, considering possibilities. The promotion waited for her in Chicago, the career she'd built over years of hard work. But here in Willow Creek, she'd found something she hadn't even known she was missing. "I talked to Karen yesterday," Sabrina said slowly. "My boss." Caleb tensed beside her, his hand stilling on the porch swing. "I asked about working remotely," she continued. "At least part-time." Hope flickered in Caleb's eyes. "What did she say?" "She wasn't thrilled," Sabrina admitted. "But she agreed to a trial period, 3 months. I'd need to come to Chicago for important meetings, maybe 1 week each month. The rest of the time I could work from here." Caleb was quiet for a long moment, processing. "You'd do that? Give up living in the city?" "I'm not giving up anything," Sabrina said, reaching for his hand. "I'm gaining something better." "The farm isn't exactly set up for a marketing director," Caleb pointed out. "Internet's spotty at best." "Then we'll improve it," Sabrina said simply. "I've already looked into better satellite options, and your office could use an update." "You've thought this through," Caleb said, a smile spreading across his face. I have, Sabrina confirmed, but what about you? Are you ready to share your quiet life with someone who takes business calls and has video meetings? Instead of answering immediately, Caleb stood and held out his hand. Come with me. I want to show you something. Curious, Sabrina followed him to his truck. They drove for about 10 minutes, taking a dirt road she hadn't been down before. When they stopped, they were at the top of a gentle hill overlooking a meadow dotted with wildflowers. In the distance, the lights of Willow Creek twinkled like earthbound stars. This land is part of the farm, Caleb explained as they got out of the truck. I bought it 5 years ago, right after Elizabeth left. It's beautiful, Sabrina said honestly, taking in the view. I had plans back then, Caleb continued, his voice soft with memory. Was going to build a house here, a bigger one with modern amenities, a home office, even a guest room that could someday be a nursery. Sabrina's breath caught as she understood what he was telling her. I never started building, Caleb said, turning to face her. Didn't see the point living alone, but the plans are still there. The foundation is already marked out. He took both her hands in his. I'm ready, Sabrina, to share my life, to build something new. If you're sure this is what you want. Sabrina looked out over the meadow, imagining, say, a house filled with light, with space for both their lives to grow together. Then she looked back at Caleb, this man who had opened his heart to her despite his past pain. I've never been more sure of anything, she said. The next morning, Sabrina called Karen to confirm the remote work arrangement. Then she and Caleb drove to Chicago to pack up her apartment. The city felt different now, still vibrant and exciting, but no longer the only place she could imagine herself. Her colleagues were shocked by her decision, especially those who had envied her promotion. You're moving where? Her friend Melissa asked in disbelief when Sabrina explained. For a farmer. Not just any farmer, Sabrina replied, unable to keep the smile from her face. And not just for him, for me too. It took 3 days to pack up her life, decide what to keep and what to sell, what to take immediately and what could be shipped later. Through it all, Caleb was patient and supportive, never pushing, always helping. On the final day, as they loaded the last boxes into his truck, Sabrina took one last look at her apartment, the place where she'd celebrated promotions, cried over setbacks, and planned her future. Having second thoughts? Caleb asked gently, noticing her hesitation. No, Sabrina said, realizing it was true. Just saying goodbye to a chapter of my life. The drive back to Willow Creek felt different this time, not an escape or a temporary visit, but a journey home. Sabrina watched the city skyline recede in the side mirror, then turned her eyes forward to the open road ahead. They arrived at the farm late that evening. As Caleb carried her boxes inside, Sabrina stood in the yard, looking up at the stars. That shone so much brighter here than in the city. Welcome home, Caleb said, coming to stand beside her. Home. Such a simple word, but so full of meaning. Sabrina had always thought home was a place, her apartment in Chicago, the house she grew up in. But now she understood that home could be a person, a feeling, a choice. The first month of their new arrangement brought challenges. Internet installations, setting up a proper home office in Caleb's study, learning to balance farm life with corporate deadlines. Sabrina's week in Chicago for meetings felt strange. The city that had once been her entire world now felt like a brief stopover in a journey that led back to Willow Creek. Through it all, their relationship deepened. Caleb supported her career ambitions, while Sabrina embraced farm life with an enthusiasm that surprised them both. They worked side by side in the vegetable garden, discussed marketing strategies over dinner, and ended each day together on the porch swing watching the sun set over the fields. 3 months turned into 6. The trial period for remote work became a permanent arrangement. Sabrina's marketing skills helped Caleb expand the farm's business, creating a website for direct sales and designing attractive packaging for the organic produce he sold to high-end restaurants in Chicago. One evening, as they walked along the property line checking fences, they stopped at the hill where Caleb had shown her his building plans. I've been thinking, he said, his voice casual, though Sabrina could hear the undercurrent of nervousness. Maybe it's time to dust off those house plans. Really? Sabrina asked, her heart quickening. Caleb nodded, looking out over the meadow. This place was always meant for a future, for a family. He turned to her, taking both her hands in his. I know it's only been 9 months since you took the wrong bus and ended up here. If it's too soon, it's not, Sabrina interrupted, squeezing his hands. It's not too soon. Relief and joy spread across Caleb's face. There's something else I've been thinking about, he said, reaching into his pocket. He pulled out a small box and dropped to one knee, there on the hillside where their future home would stand. Sabrina Ellis, he said, his voice steady despite the emotion in his eyes. You made this place feel like more than land. You made it feel like home. Will you marry me? Inside the box was a ring, not flashy or extravagant, but beautiful in its simplicity, with a small diamond set in a band of polished silver. It was my grandmother's, Caleb explained. If you'd prefer something more modern... It's perfect, Sabrina said, tears blurring her vision. And yes, I'll marry you. Caleb slipped the ring onto her finger, then stood and pulled her into his arms, kissing her with all the love that had grown between them since that first mistaken bus ride. They were married 6 months later, in the white barn where they'd first met. Mike served as Caleb's best man, while Melissa came from Chicago to be Sabrina's maid of honor. The ceremony was simple but beautiful, with wildflowers from the meadow decorating the tables and fairy lights strung from the rafters. Sabrina wore an elegant but simple dress with practical boots hidden underneath, a compromise that made Caleb laugh when she showed him during their first dance. By the time their first anniversary arrived, the house on the hill was nearly complete. Modern but rustic, with large windows overlooking the farm, it balanced both their needs perfectly. Sabrina's home office had the best internet connection in the county, while Caleb's workshop gave him space for the woodworking he'd rediscovered a passion for. The nursery remained empty for now, but painted a soft yellow, ready for the future they both wanted. A future neither had imagined, before a wrong turn brought them together. One evening, as they sat on the porch of their new home, watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks, Sabrina leaned against Caleb's shoulder. Do you ever think about how different our lives would be if I'd taken the right bus that day? She asked. Caleb's arm tightened around her. Sometimes. But then, I remember what I told you at the bus stop. What's that? That you took the wrong bus, he said, pressing a kiss to her temple. But you were exactly where you were supposed to be. Sabrina smiled, her hand finding his, fingers intertwining as naturally as breathing. I think you were right. Below them, the lights of the farm glowed warm against the gathering dusk. In the barn, a new litter of kittens had been born that morning. In the greenhouse, tomato seedlings were just beginning to sprout, and in the meadow, wildflowers swayed in the gentle evening breeze, as if dancing to celebrate all that had grown. From one wrong turn and the courage to follow an unexpected path. I love you, Caleb said simply. I love you too, Sabrina replied, knowing in her heart that no promotion, no city skyline could ever compare to the life they'd built together in this small town she'd never meant to find. As night fell fully over Willow Creek, they watched the first stars appear, their light a reminder that sometimes the most beautiful things begin with getting lost and finding home in the most unexpected places.